to the Free Kick Podcast. My name is Todd, and what a disappointing night it was last night at Subaru Park in a game where the Union completely dominated in the first half, and you turn it over and look at the second half, complete different game. And I had the feeling, and I don't know about you guys, leaving Subaru Park last night, feeling like the Union lost that game, even though they came away with a point. Just a complete feeling of huge disappointment. A feeling that I haven't felt in a very long time, and some of you guys might be saying, well, didn't you feel that way against Inter Miami and Messi when Miami beat the Union 4-1? Yeah, but, it's not MLS play. Like, I don't know. If you guys listened to the last episode with Devin Kerr, episode before that, I don't know. I was kind of buying into maybe the Union really do have a shot at the Supporters' Shield, and this is great. Cincinnati lost to Orlando City. If the Union beat Cincinnati at home, now the Union are 8 points out of first place. If you win that game in hand, now you're 5 points out of first place. And yes, you got to rely on Cincinnati losing games, and you still got to keep winning yours. But my whole argument was Cincinnati's never been here before. And to their credit last night, they showed why they're a team that are in first place, leading the Supporters' Shield. A team that should win the Supporters' Shield at the end of the regular season. Currently 11 points, once again, off of the Union. Again, the Union have a game in hand, so if they win that, now you're 8. But, man, I felt a lot comfortable if the Union would have beat Cincinnati, won the game in hand, now you're 5. I don't know. I guess I should have listened to a whole bunch of people. Maybe some of you listeners, too, were like, man, I've already known that the Union aren't winning Supporters' Shield. And if that's how you feel, then good on you. You guys were right. So I do think the Supporters' Shield is done and over with now. You got to make sure that you cement your place in the top 4. Second is within reach. I know Orlando City, huge comeback victory last night over the Columbus Crew. 4-3 game for Orlando City last night at home. 97th minute winner. An insane game from the Lions last night, which puts them in second place on 50 points. And now the Union, they do have a game in hand. So if they win that game in hand, then they go equal in points with Orlando City. Colorado last night did the Union a huge favor by beating New England by a score of 2-1. Shout out Colorado. New manager bump. Getting their win at home finally. And I do feel bad for those fans. For people that cover that team. It's been dire at home for the Rapids this season. Rapids supporter section had a walkout. Kroenke out was the message. And we'll see. We'll see what happens with Rapids come this offseason. Does Kroenke sell? I don't think so. But something to keep an eye out on. Is MLS paying attention to what's going on in Colorado, a stadium that's in dire need of renovations? And yeah, it's great. You can talk the talk, but talking to people in Colorado, seeing what people are saying online, that's been the MO the last 4 or 5 years. It's just nothing but talk. So I do feel bad for the Rapids, but a huge win for them last night helps the Union out as well. And we still have plenty of soccer to be played. Just sucks that, yes, the Union didn't lose last night, but it feels like a huge loss. So no news this episode. We're going to get straight into talking about FC Cincinnati. Going to play, I think, 4 or 5 sound bites from after the game. Going to hear from Jim Curtin, Pat Noonan, Kai Wagner. And we're going to go ahead and review my keys to the game. 3 stars, blunder of the week, and that should be the episode. So let's just get straight into the Philadelphia Union Cincinnati game. And I'll start this episode off with some stats for you guys. And this is the first time this season that the Union haven't won a game when they've scored first. Prior to this game, they had 10 wins, 0 losses, 0 draws. First blown 2-0 lead since 2018 against New England Revolution. Now, the good thing about that game is the Union actually found a way to win the game 3-2, but it's been a really long time since the Union have last blown a 2-0 lead. And people say it all the time, right? A 2-0 lead is the most dangerous lead in all of soccer. And time again, it proves that that's right. And okay, if this game's on the road and the Union blow a 2-0 lead, well, the Union again, 2018 is the last time the Union blew that lead. Hasn't happened in a long time, but you don't expect them to do that at home. On the road, okay, fine. It is what it is. But at home, where you've been one of the most dominant teams over the last 5 years in MLS at Subaru Park, it's not great. And I was talking to Skylar Hoffner sitting next to him in the press box, and I said, man, I just don't get the same vibes from this current Union team than I did last year. And I know it's the same team as it was last year. Okay, yeah, Corey Burke didn't come back this year. But you would say, yeah, you upgraded with Ty Baribo, and it just, man, it's disappointing. And I don't want to get you guys down, and I don't want to beat a dead horse saying, well, last year was career years for a majority of those players, and they're never going to hit those highs again. And that's probably the truth. And I think when you look at the stats, when you look at how this team played last year, because it was so dominant at home, they were over 500 on the road last season. You never counted this team out, and you don't count this team out this year, but you just don't get those dominant wins. And this is a team where you feel like you're living on the edge of your seat. Last year, I didn't really get that feeling. And maybe that's because of all the blowout wins the Union had towards the end of the season. But something feels different about this team right now. A team that prides themselves on clean sheets, have conceded 33 goals on the season now. Remember last season, again, historic season, only 26 goals conceded in the whole season. And there are still 7 games to be played. And I would not be shocked if the Union get close to that 40 goals conceded this season, because when you look at their clean sheets, they're not doing that either. Haven't kept a clean sheet in 5 straight matches. Last home clean sheet was June 3rd against Montreal. And I think everybody, I mean, you don't even have to look at the score. People know that this team seems broken defensively. How many stupid mistakes have we talked about on this podcast the last few weeks? Uncharacteristic errors. Miami game. You talk about the Querétaro game where the Union score in the second game around minute 20 minute 20 it was, I think it was. And then the Union take their foot off the pedal. And it's kind of similar to what happened last night against Cincinnati, where, the Union are coasting in the first half. And then the second half, they get caught sleeping. So I don't know. It's something's wrong defensively. And I asked Kai Wagner after the game, is it a spacing issue? Because at times on the left-hand side, it does seem like when they're playing a back five that the spacing's off between Damian Lowe and Kai Wagner, Damian Lowe and Jack Elliott and Glesnes. And Kai didn't think it was spacing issues last night. That's fair. But there are moments throughout the season that there are huge spacing issues. There's miscommunication. I mean, look at the goal that Cincinnati scored where Damian Lowe and Jack Elliott both step for the ball. They both step for the ball. Nobody communicates. I mean, that's poor. It's so poor where they got punished for it. And they deserve to get punished for both players stepping. You don't get this from this team last season. 3 minutes out of the break, and you already have a huge defensive issue. It's not good enough. Bupenza, by the way, I don't know how closely you guys follow what was going on with him, but his flights got messed up leaving Africa, and then he had to fly to Paris, and then he had to fly into New York City yesterday, and then he had to find his way to Philadelphia. And so he was never going to start this game against the Union. But instant impact coming off the bench, 3 minutes in, scores a goal. Instant impact. Because Damian Lowe, Jack Elliott both step to Brandon Vasquez. Brandon Vasquez has a nice pass into Kubo. And Jack Elliott leaves Jacob Glesnes on an island. So this team, I don't want to say they're broken defensively. Because when you go around MLS and you look at the amount of goals other teams have conceded, it's a lot more than the Union. Union, again, have conceded 33 on the season. Look at St. Louis. They're in first place in the Western Conference, conceded 38 goals so far. Now, if the Union were in the Western Conference, where it's much weaker this season than the Eastern Conference, you would feel a lot more comfortable. 49 points for St. Louis, have played 29 games. LAFC, 43 points. Seattle, 42 points. Vancouver, 41 points. Houston, 40 points. Real Salt Lake, 40. San Jose, 40. Minnesota, 37. Sporting Kansas City, 35. Nobody's running away with it in the Western Conference. In the East, you have Cincinnati, 58. Orlando City, 50. 48, New England. 47, Philadelphia. 45, Columbus. 45, Atlanta. 40, Nashville. 36, Montreal. 35, DC United. So you'd feel good, right? You would feel good about how the Union are playing just because of their standing in the Western Conference, right? But man, it's pitiful watching this team defensively not keep clean sheets. And how many times have you guys heard me talk about Jim Curtin or playing clips where Jim Curtin always says, we're a team that's not built to play from behind? And that's great. They get a 2-0 lead and somehow find a way to mess it up. The second goal, a bad pass by Julian Kranza. And Cincinnati pounce on it and make the Union pay. Damian Lowe, a little bit unlucky that the ball deflects off of his foot, goes in the back of the net. But he didn't play great defensively. My goals breakdown video is out. If you guys haven't seen that, where I only broke down the 4 goals, didn't feel like making a longer video and showing you guys some of the chances that the Union had in this game and some of the saves by Andre Blake. Because, by the way, Andre Blake, he's the reason the Union did not lose this game 3-2, 4-2. Huge save on Brandon Vasquez in the second half, where Brandon Vasquez outmuscles Jack Elliott. His shot hits into the ground, and it's a little bit awkward for Andre Blake, but he does well to make the save, push it out. Cincinnati kept the play alive, and Bupenza had a header out-jump Nate Harriel. Fortunately for the Union, Bupenza's header went high. Wobodeau completely turned Damian Lowe. I don't know what that defending was. Damian Lowe just opened his body and allowed Wobodeau to run straight on through the goal. What kind of defense is that? And so if you guys aren't familiar with that play again, look it out on YouTube. I clearly highlighted that. YouTube.com/freekickpod. So maybe should we say that this team's broken defensively? I think broken's a harsh word, but there is something wrong defensively. And maybe that's when they play the 3-5-2 or 5 in the back, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. You're playing with 3 center backs. It's not been good enough for the Union defensively at home in the last 5 matches. 0 clean sheets. Gazdag, 10 penalties now on the season, which breaks the MLS record for most penalties in a single season for a player to convert. Congrats to Daniel Gazdag, but if we're in Europe, people are going to be calling him a pen merchant. And it's crazy too, right? Where Daniel Gazdag has 12 goals on the season, still in the Golden Boot race. I asked Skylar Hoffner this. You guys answer this as well. What if Daniel Gazdag winds up winning the Golden Boot when majority of his goals are penalty kicks? Does he win MVP? Because usually when the Golden Boot winner has a significant amount of goals, he's winning MVP as well. Would the voters vote Daniel Gazdag as MVP of the league if he won Golden Boot with majority of those goals coming from the penalty spot? I don't think so. I think Lucho is by far the clear winner. Hani Mukhtar might have something to say about that, but right now it's definitely Acosta, which, by the way, if Lucho would have played last night, don't you guys think that Cincinnati by far would have won this game? I mean, Cincinnati played like that in the second half with no Acosta this game. Kubo, fantastic as a 10, and I wasn't sure what Pat Noonan was going to do this game. We've seen him play Barrial at the 10 at times against the Union. Kubo's played as a 10. Kubo, fantastic at the 10. There's a player I remember a couple seasons ago. Cincinnati fans are writing him off saying, oh, he's a flop. This is a terrible signing. Why did we sign this guy? And look at Pat Noonan. Great coach. Turning a player that was flopping in MLS into a quality depth piece. That's the type of coach Pat Noonan is. Really, really good coach. Look at Ian Murphy. You guys heard Devin Kerr if you listened about it. It looks like you might have something now, Cincinnati fans, in Ian Murphy, a guy who wasn't really expected to be anything this season. And when he's been called upon, he's been fantastic for Cincinnati. And it's exactly why Pat Noonan went with him in the second half. Said, hey, we need to clean things up defensively. Ian, that's going to be you. And he did a fantastic job cleaning things up for Cincinnati in the second half. But it leads me to a question. And Jim Curtin was asked after the game, is there something wrong with the 3-5-2 formation?
I think you've seen extremes, right? I think you saw a Red Bull performance where it looked pretty good. There's been games where we've grinded out ugly wins in the back three. I still will tell you when all of our players are here, which they weren't tonight. We're probably best out of that diamond, but I still think the formation is still a useful one. Obviously, when you concede, there's going to be questions about it. And if you look at it, the goals, I don't want to oversimplify it, but we do have 2 guys released, and that's a general rule. You can't do that, especially in the middle of the field. And now we're spread out. That's too far of a distance for Kai to cover. So we get caught there. And then the technical mistake of just a pass back that's kind of straight to their forward and creates a chance. So I don't know if I can blame the formation for that one. But yeah, you miss Ali in a game like that. They miss the Costa for sure. And then the big one too, when Jose has to go out. You just lose his bite in the middle part of the field. That hurt too.
Yeah, and I think Jim does have a point where it really wasn't the formation this game. The formation had nothing to do with the reason that the Union conceded 2 goals. Again, You heard Jim said you cannot have two center backs stepping at the same guy. Doesn't matter if you're playing 4-4-2. Doesn't matter if you're playing a 4-3-3. Doesn't matter if you're playing 3 in the back, 5 in the back. You cannot have two players not communicating, stepping for the same ball, because that's going to open up a big hole. And that's exactly what happened on the first goal. A huge gaping hole. Nothing Jacob Glesnes can do. Nothing for Kai Wagner to do to catch up to Bupenza. He tried. Couldn't, because he was so wide. And I'm looking at the wins and losses right here. I mean, you have the perfect example. Against Red Bulls, you win 4-1. No questions are asked about the 3 in the back in that game. The next time you played 3 in the back in MLS was against Atlanta. You lose that game 2-0. Then after that, San Jose, you lost that game 2-1. You scored first in that game. Damian Lowe tied the game up, I believe it was. Then you go and look. At home against Montreal, you won 3-0. At home against Charlotte, you win that one 1-0. Away at New York City, you play 3 in the back again. You win that one 3-1. Play 3 in the back against New England. You win that 3-0. Colorado, you win that game 2-1. Against Cincinnati in April, you lose that game 1-0. And that's it. And so this is only the third loss in MLS regular season play. Playing with 3 defenders, 3 center backs, 5 defenders, whatever you guys want to call it. Because I know some of you guys get picky. Not going to name names, but it's the same thing. You're playing with 3 center backs. It's the point I'm making. And the results show, at least on paper, it works. You get wins. True. But I think it still doesn't discredit that there is spacing issues. There is spacing issues, there's communication issues, because the Union primarily do not play this formation. And it's funny, right? I remember asking Jim Curtin in January, will you guys play 3 in the back, change formation? And he says, yeah. And everybody's calling for formation changes, and there's clearly issues. There's clearly issues with this formation. The team doesn't feel comfortable. Kai Wagner said after the game, once again, that he prefers to play in the 4-4-2 diamond. Says that the pressing cues, that the defensive work is different when you're playing with 3 defenders, when you're playing with 4 defenders in the 4-4-2 diamond. And so if the players feel that way, despite the scoreline showing that, yeah, you've only lost 3 times this season in MLS play, and you have a lot more wins when you play with 3 in the back, clearly something's up with that formation. And yeah, I guess it's easy to point fingers and whatnot when you concede goals in this formation. But I don't know. I mean, I think I've seen enough of this formation this season where I'm like, as much I was calling for this formation, it just doesn't seem as sound as the 4-4-2 diamond. And that makes sense, right? Because majority of these players have been here since 2020. We've been playing the 4-4-2 diamond formation since 2019. So majority of these players are used to playing in the diamond. The pressing cues, knowing where to be on the field, is like knowing the back of your hand for these players. And now you worry going into Charlotte, Jack Elliott's going to miss that game because he got a red card. You're going to miss Jose Martinez, potentially. He had to exit this game because of an injury to his back. You'll get Bedoya back, so you really don't gain any midfield depth if Jose Martinez is not good to go in this game. By the way, Liam Flock, Jim Curtin said during the week, got a second opinion in Germany. and they're not going to do the surgery that they thought they were going to do. So Liam Flock could be back in 2 weeks. Don't know how I feel about that. Don't want to rush Leon Flock back and potentially make the injury worse. But, if the doctors in Germany say, yeah, that surgery they were going to schedule for you in America, you don't need it. So I guess trust the doctors, but I'm a little bit weary about that because don't want Leon Flock getting even more hurt than what he appeared to be in Toronto when he had to exit that game early. So you would imagine you lose Jack Elliott for this Charlotte game. You play the 4-4-2 diamond, I would imagine. I mean, you're not going to put Makanya out there, right? For his first MLS action away in Charlotte, a game I don't have to remind you guys of what happened last year. I don't know. I think there's, again, a lot of questions to be asked about this team formationally. Going into Charlotte with Jack Elliott suspended, I know some people out there would say, well, if you had Brandon Craig, this wouldn't be an issue. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not too sure about that. But we're not here to talk about what's going to happen in Charlotte. We're not talking about what Jim Curtin should do about that game. We're talking about what didn't happen against Cincinnati last night. So, I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? You guys think that the Union should continue to play 3-5-2 when they don't have the midfield depth? Because I do think that this team did lose a lot in the middle of the field when Jose Martinez went out. And that's not a knock on Jesus Bueno at all. But Jose Martinez had himself a good game. Yes, of course, you're going to say, well, he scored a goal. Of course he had a good game. But really dictating the tempo, winning balls back for the Union in the midfield, covering for Jack McGlynn, who wasn't great defensively, I thought, for the Union. Got caught out of position a couple times, but it doesn't matter when you have Jose Martinez next to you and you can tell Jack McGlynn, hey, look, you set the tempo. Everything's going to go through you. Involved in the Union's 2 goals. And then when you lose Jose Martinez, now a little bit more defensive responsibility on Jack McGlynn and it gets tough for him in there. So I do think, things change. And I know I'm going on a huge rant right here about is something wrong with 3-5-2 and brought up a whole bunch of different points right there. But yeah, something just seemed off about it last night, and it seems off every time we play this. And I think majority of that is spacing, players not sure where they're supposed to be, and miscommunication. And all 3 of those issues happened last night against Cincinnati. But what exactly did Cincinnati do at the start of the second half that got them back into this game?
They made a big personnel change. They brought a $8 million player in, and he made some plays. He's good. So I don't want to oversimplify it, but sometimes that can be a difference, a real difference maker. So good player came into the game. They kept the same formation, so there was nothing different in that way. They played Hagelin for Murphy, straight swap, and then Sergio for Buspenza, and he came in and gave them life. We let ourselves down to start the half. That really is what it comes down to. I love our center backs being aggressive, but if you watch that playback, a little communication, and maybe Damien just steps, Jack stays, and it's a nothing play. But when they both go, it's party over. You're leaving Jacob on a huge island, and there's a big hole there, and we paid for it. And then the other one, again, it's a technical mistake of a back pass that goes literally directly to their forward, and we're caught off guard. Bupenza plays a great first-time ball. So I don't oversimplify it, but that was a good change and a good player to bring in for sure.
Yeah, and I think one thing Jim Curtin didn't bring up is the possession stats completely changed from the first half to the second half. In the first half, Cincinnati had 65% of the ball while the Union had 35%. The second half, Cincinnati had 51%, the Union had 49%. Cincinnati in the second half forced the Union to have more of the ball than they did in the first half. And I go back to the very first game of the season against Columbus. when Columbus scored the goal in the 25th minute, I believe it was, Jacob Glesnes' own goal, they approached that game letting the Union have the ball. And maybe I'm making it seem a lot more simpler than it is, but you beat this Union team by forcing them to have the ball, letting them try to find those line splitting passes. Because you know they're going to play long ball after long ball after long ball into the channels for Mikau Uwa to run onto. And that doesn't work all the time. And so you're comfortable, the opposition, letting the Union play those balls over the top. If you want the Union to beat you, let them play those line splitting passes. And that's where somebody like Jack McGlynn can hurt you. Did hurt Cincinnati in this game, involved in 2 goals. The pass into Jose Martinez, fantastic finish, and then the long ball over the top to Daniel Gazdag. His vision, he sees things other players don't see. He had a couple line splitting passes in this game as well where nobody else on this team can hit that pass. And so what do? You start to put pressure on Jack McGlynn. You make him uncomfortable. You get him out of position defensively. You go at Jack McGlynn defensively. And, yeah, I mean, maybe it is a lot more difficult than I'm making it seem, where just let the Union have the ball. But Jim says it all the time. We're a team that's not built to play from behind. We're a team that's always going to have less of the ball. That's how they've built this team. Not saying that they can't beat teams with having the ball, but prime example last night, 49% of the ball in the second half. What did the Union do in the second half? Nothing. It was so flat in the second half when they were forced to have the ball to break down Cincinnati. Didn't do anything. 8 shots, I believe, in the second half, only 1 on target. It's poor. The only shot on target in the second half was a Julian Kranza header, I believe it was, 72nd, 73rd minute, can't remember. The only shot on target. That's an issue, right? Not creating chances, not creating good chances. Cincinnati forcing the Union to take shots outside the box, blocking shots. Great defensive performance by Cincinnati in the second half. Ian Murphy talked about him a minute ago. Huge second half, shored things up defensively for Cincy. Yeah, force the Union to hold on to the ball, beat you with the ball. More times than not, it's not going to happen. And then the first thing Jim said, well, they brought on a $8 million player. Remember, he said the same thing in 2021 when New York City brought Talis Magno off the bench in the Eastern Conference Final and he scored the game-winning goal. So again, you have shots fired by Jim Curtin towards the front office saying, look, these kind of players make a difference. Literally 3 minutes into the second half, and he scores a goal coming off the bench. Game changer. Union don't have anything like that. Absolutely nothing like that. Do you guys worry what this team is going to look like next season if we get major roster rule changes? Where's that going to leave the Union? The Moneyball approach has been working for the Union with the current roster restrictions. But what if they open up spending even more? Charlotte has no problem spending. Cincinnati has no problem spending. Atlanta has no problem spending. LAFC, LA Galaxy. There's a lot of teams in this league that have owners that are so rich, have no problems paying top dollars for top talent in South America or wherever they're going out to get some of these players. Where's that going to leave the Union? Is the Moneyball approach going to continue to work for this team? I'm not sure. But we're worried about that when it gets here, and we'll ask questions when it's appropriate. But at this time, there's still 8 more games until playoffs, and can't focus on what may or may not happen in the offseason. Can only focus on the present. And in the present, the Union don't look good defensively. And credit to Cincinnati for capitalizing on a Union mistake. 2 players' first goal. Jim Curtin said it multiple times last night. I've said it multiple times this podcast. Just simple things. Communicate. What about Pat Noonan? What did he see from this game that Cincinnati did in the second half compared to the first?
We were just a better version of ourselves in the second half, and we were more disciplined. And when we do that, when we play like that, even in tough environments against good teams, we can create, we can score, we can win. And so, despite not getting 3 points tonight, it still feels like a positive getting a point, having been down 2 goals. So yeah, when we are playing like we did in the second half, and everybody's playing simple and playing composed and with discipline, we're a tough team to play against.
Absolutely. Discipline. And he said that multiple times during his press conference as well last night. 13 fouls in the first half by his players compared to 8 in the second half. Got drawn into the Union's game of drawing fouls, getting in players' faces, trying to get you off your game. And we did see that be an effect in the first half for Cincinnati. Miazga and Gaza going at it multiple times. Mascara going at it with Julian Kranza. The Union were getting in Cincinnati players' heads. And credit to Pat Noonan for getting his message across, telling these players, we are not playing our game. You guys are letting them get inside your head. Be more disciplined. Don't fall for the antics. And they cleaned it up in the second half. They also created more chances in the second half. They have 5 compared to only 1 chance created in the first half. 2 out of 4 of their shots were on target. That resulted in goals. And then it's as simple as the Union's mistakes cost them, and good teams punish you. And that's not to take away what Cincinnati did. Again, I talked about it a minute ago, forcing the Union to have the ball, to go at Cincinnati, and then Cincinnati picking and choosing when to win the ball back and then go at the Union. And every time that the Union made a mistake, Cincinnati was right there to pounce on it. And remember, I said right at the beginning of the podcast, if it wasn't for Andre Blake, this team would have lost. The Union would have lost. And don't want to sound too negative, because you heard Pat. They're delighted that they got a point in Subaru Park, where it's a difficult environment to come into. When you're down by 2 goals, that feels like a win. Where I said, it feels like a loss, even though the Union got a point. It feels like a loss because you had a 2-goal lead. The Union simply do not blow leads. And they did against Cincinnati. And good teams punish you. And that's a credit to Pat Noonan's belief that he is instilled into these players, getting them ready from the very start. And Cincinnati is not a team that scores many goals between the 41st and 50th minute. That was only their 5th time during that time frame this season that they've scored a goal. And the Union, for the most part, don't concede during that time either. Only 4 goals that they've conceded now during that time frame. But Pat had his guys ready to come out of the half. They knew exactly what to do. And yes, it came from a mistake. Not much what Cincinnati did for the first goal. Yes, huge mistake. Miscommunication. 6th, 7th time mentioning that. Because it's not good enough. It is not good enough. From a player in Jack Elliott, who's been one of the most underrated center backs the last couple of years. A lot of mistakes this season from him. Damian Lowe gives you up and down performances. A lot of good from him, a lot of bad. And this game against Cincinnati, a lot of bad. So credit to Cincinnati for being inspired, believing in one another, and punishing the union. And so the last thing I want to say about this game is Kai Wagner, once again, gave us more comments about his contract situation. And I think before I play Kai's comments, I'm going to read you guys some of Ernst Tanner's comments to reporters on Friday. Wasn't able to attend open practice, to the media on Friday, as you know. Not my full-time job doing this. Work comes first. So I wasn't able to attend and be able to talk to Ernst Tanner, but luckily Joe Tanzi, Jonathan Tannenwald, Matt DeGeorge, all three of those guys were there and able to report on the questions they asked Ernst and Ernst's response to them. In regards to Kai's comments last week to Jose Nunez about it being his last year in Philadelphia, Ernst Tanner said this: "What he said is only half the truth. I told him in the summer that we could improve our offer, and this was not good enough for Kai. He could have stayed here if he would have taken the offer. I'd say it like that. But if we don't come together, it's a natural way. It was not like clubs over in Europe were offering like hell for him. So I think sometimes you need to be very happy with what you have instead of looking over to the other side of the river. The grass might shine a little bit brighter, but in reality, in particular, if you know what's going on in Europe right now, meaning financially, clubs are losing money like crazy, it's not that bright." Ernst Tanner with a lot of words towards Kai Wagner, telling him, hey, look, we offered you not one, but 2 contract extensions. We came in the summertime and offered you more money than what you're currently getting paid. And you still turned that down. Now, one thing that is worth noting is the CBA for the league mandates that if a player enters free agency, he can only raise his salary up 15% in the first year, and then the future years will be caps based on whatever his new salary is going to be. And so no other team in MLS can offer Kai Wagner high money other than the union, because 15% would pay Kai Wagner around $724,000, where he's currently making $701,000 with compensation totals. $630,000 base is what Kai gets. And so you would imagine the union probably offered Kai around $724,000, because that's what other teams could offer him if he left. So I don't think the union would have an issue paying that. But Kai Wagner obviously turned down the second contract. Ernst Tanner said he's an excellent outside back, and that's what we acknowledged already and what we are paying. And we would have improved it, but we can't go to hemispheres where we set the wrong tone. And what Ernst means by that is, one, they don't want to be the trendsetters in MLS by what it's going to cost to now pay your fullbacks. The union don't want to be the ones that set that. And two, if the union pay Kai Wagner, let's say he wants to be paid DP money, because that's what I feel like will get this deal done, is paying Kai money where you can buy down with TAM, and now he's not going to count as a DP. So you can pay him, I think, up to $1.2 million before you can't buy him down. I believe that's what it is in MLS rules. And so I'd imagine that number is around there, what Kai's probably asking for. And the union don't feel comfortable setting that, because if they do, Jose Martinez is going to say, well, pay me even more money. Jacob Glesnes, Jack Elliott. You're going to destroy your wage structure. And that is not good for clubs. That's why so many clubs in Europe are in debt. astronomical fees to acquire the player and then the wages. A Manchester United player. The amount of money they pay players is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. What, $350,000 I think Bruno Fernandes is on? Ridiculous. Jadon Sancho, who's being cast away from the club, one of your highest earners at the club. I mean, ridiculous. Anthony Martial gets paid a ton of money, always injured. A poorly run club, and the Union don't want to become that. Not saying that they have any chance at all becoming Manchester United, spending like Manchester United. Not at all. But the Union don't want to be killing their wage structure. And I look at a club like Liverpool. Great club. Run really well. Where they're not overpaying players. They're not offering Mohamed Salah over the moon. And now you're going to have Darwin Nunez. You're going to have Virgil van Dijk, Alisson. All these players saying, well, we want to be paid close to what Salah's being paid. No. Because they're not paying Salah crazy money. They know what their wage structure is going to be. They're not going to let a player dictate setting that wage structure. And that's exactly what the Union stance is with Kai Wagner. And so we got that information, like I said, from Ernst Tanner on Friday. Kai Wagner was asked about that after the game, and this is what he had to say.
I don't want to say much about it anymore. I think everybody knows my standpoint. I don't ask for much. I don't ask for crazy money. Everybody should know it, that I'm really happy here, that my family loves it here. I love the team, I love the fans, but on the other side, I think the team and the fans, they should get a little bit more out of this club. I mean, this club can be so much more. And I don't know, if you move forward sometimes to lose one of your best players, that's how it is. I have to take it. I will look forward. I will still play until the end of my life for this club, and what happened next year, it's not in my hands anymore.
So we have two people with shots fired at the front office. This club can be so much more, Kai Wagner said. That's clearly an indication that the club needs to start spending more money. Jim Curtin talking about, well, they brought in a $8 million player off the bench. Shots fired at the front office. Kai Wagner saying, I'm not asking for crazy money. This club's being held back by what they don't spend. Is he wrong? One of the lowest spending teams in MLS, the Union are. And so what's going on right here is just Kai Wagner and Ernst Tanner both negotiating through the media. Kai says he's happy here in Philadelphia. His family loves it here in Philadelphia. And I do think it's funny, too, going back to Ernst Tanner's comments. He said it was not like clubs over in Europe were offering like hell for him. And he's right. And I've said that all along, if you guys have been listening, that those offers for Kai Wagner have truly not been there. And I think that's why he's okay staying with the Union, staying in MLS, because top clubs, mid-table clubs in Europe in top 5 leagues aren't interested in him. I think him and his agent have come to that realization that, okay, there should have been clubs interested in him. Very talented player. You can't force teams to be interested in Kai Wagner. And so, knowing that, okay, he changes his mindset. I'll stay in Philadelphia. I'll stay in MLS. I got a good thing here. But pay me what I'm worth. That's what Kai's saying. And he says, I'm not asking for crazy money. And my opinion, I think he's asking for close to DP money. And the Union don't feel comfortable paying that. So what happens? I'm not sure. We'll see what happens. It would be a shame if the Union lose Kai Wagner, especially to a team in MLS. Kai says he's done talking about his contract. I want to be done talking about it here on this podcast. I know I said it a while ago now. Back-to-back episodes where we're talking about Kai Wagner's contract situation. So hopefully this is the last until we get either he's officially gone or he officially resigns. So hopefully this is the last. But let's go ahead and talk about My keys to the game that I set for this game, I said, don't concede first. Cincinnati, when they scored first in MLS this season, they were 14-0-4. 67% of the games won when scoring first. 3-0-3 on the road. And that was a pass because the Union obviously scored the first 2 goals. Didn't have to worry about Cincinnati scoring first, coming from behind. Union going to hold the lead. So it's a pass because they didn't concede first, but feels like loss, right? Feels like a loss, even though the Union scored first. Point number 2, I said, was counterattacks. Both teams love to hit on the counter. I expected nothing different in this game, and both teams did try to hit on the counterattack. And so I'm going to say this is a fail because it wasn't your traditional counterattack by Cincinnati on the 2 goals that they scored. But it was quick transitions. Win the ball back, and now you go and attack. Go from defense to offense quickly. And Cincinnati scored both of their times off of Union turnovers. And then number 3, I said strong defensively on the wings. I'm going to say not available because none of Cincinnati's attacks really went through their fullbacks. A lot of their attacks went through the middle. And so Nate Harry or Kai Wagner really weren't tested that much out wide. In the first half, I thought Nate did a good job on Barrial. Second half, Barrial started to get the better of him on a couple of occasions, but majority of the half was played down the middle, so that's a not available. And 1 for 3 on my keys to the game for the Union to get a victory, so not great. 1 for 2 if you don't want to count the third one. And then 3 stars. Number 3, Kai Wagner, 5 chances created, 1 block, 1 interception, 6 ball recoveries. Again, how you can allow a player that creates so many chances for you is crazy, but at the same time, I understand not wanting to kill your wage structure. So, again, don't want to talk about Kai's contract too much, but had a good game against Cincinnati on the night. Number 2, Jack McGlynn, 1 assist, 2 interceptions, had that pass into Daniel Gazdag that led to the penalty kick. Really good offensively by Jack McGlynn, trying to let him dictate this game, especially in the first half. The second half got away from him like we talked about. First start on the night, Jose Martinez, 1 goal, 1 for 1 tackles, 1 interception, 8 ball recoveries, also won 3 fouls for the Union on the night. And a lot changed in the middle of the field once Jose Martinez went out. Again, we talked about that, but those were the Union's 3 best players on the night, in my opinion. Let's quickly go over Blunder of the Week. And a lot of good choices, as always, but by far, the biggest blunder of the week was American fullback Sam Vines left off of Belgian club Antwerp's Champions League roster due to an administrative error.
Yeah, not good.
Played against Athens in Antwerp's Champions League qualifying games, was a big reason why Antwerp are in their first ever Champions League. And now he doesn't get to be a part of it because of a huge error. Reminds me of the tax issue sending David De Gea to Real Madrid years ago. And De Gea was on his way to Madrid, but the transfer got filed too late because of technological issues. Same situation here. Didn't fill the right paperwork. And now Sam Vines doesn't get to play in Champions League unless Antwerp advance out of the group stages. I mean, I'd be gutted. I'd be pissed. Especially I played a big role helping you qualify. And something so stupid, something so simple, you forget to file something. An administration error. The coach, Mark Van Brommel, came out and said, yeah, he was supposed to be on and we messed up. This is on us. I mean, as a player, how do you get in the right mindset? Like, wouldn't you be pissed? I would. This is why players leave MLS. Sam Vines, by the way, was with Colorado, so shout out Colorado once again in this podcast. I feel like we've given Colorado a lot of shout outs this season on this pod. Are we turning into a Rapids podcast? I don't know. But Sam Vines came good from Colorado, gets a European move like he wanted, gets to play in Champions League, it looks like, which all Americans, all players in MLS want to go to Europe to play in Champions League. Sam Vines finally gets to experience that just to be told, we messed up with the paperwork. I'd be pissed. I mean, how do you mess up something so simple? I don't know. I mean, hopefully Sam's in the right headspace, but I don't know. I'd be feeling a lot of different emotions. Might even say, yeah, sell me. I don't want to be at this club anymore. I mean, I'd probably be saying some wild stuff, especially if I played a key role getting the club to the first ever Champions League. Like, I want to be a part of that history. And I don't get to be a part of it now? Ugh, feels so bad for Sam. So there's Blender of the Week. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. And hopefully wasn't too negative for you guys. I don't think I was being too harsh on the Union. I think I shared a lot of the same concerns that many of you guys were feeling. Hopefully as the week goes on, you guys start to feel better about what happened against Cincinnati. I think, like I said, I was so disappointed because I really believe that the Union had a real shot of getting themselves back in the Supporters Shield conversation, and it's pretty much out of the window now. 11-point difference. Yes, you have a game in hand. 8 points with 7 games remaining. I think it's too hard of an ask. So if you guys aren't following the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook, follow @FreeKickPod. Wherever you get your podcast, The Free Kick. Be sure to like and review the podcast. Tell me what you like, what you don't like. The YouTube page, youtube.com/FreeKickPod for the goals breakdowns. As always, thank you guys for sharing the videos on social media, for watching the videos. Trying to get to 100 subscribers. I think I'm at 80 or 81. So we're close. And as always, just thank you guys for interacting. Hopefully you guys enjoyed what you listened to in this episode. There's going to be no midweek podcast for the Charlotte game or the LAFC game because of it being a Wednesday game and then a Saturday game. So not going to be able to get anybody onto the podcast to do previews, and don't feel like rushing episodes out, trying to get Union fans on the podcast. So yeah, we'll just do review episodes. That episode will come out on Thursday night, Friday morning, and then Friday you'll definitely have that episode. I'm trying to give you guys a schedule because I go on vacation starting next week, and we're still going to do the podcast, but it's going to be tough trying to get you guys all those episodes out, I would imagine. So, I mean, you'll definitely have the LAFC review episode on Sunday, I want to say. I fly out on vacation on Sunday. And then we have Dallas, I believe, on Wednesday. And then Columbus away. I was supposed to have a Columbus preview episode, and I know I'm just, talking out loud, giving you guys my schedule. So I don't know. I'm going to try to give you a podcast every time that I'm supposed to record, but we'll see what happens. I mean, the plan is to definitely take all my equipment with me when I go on vacation, but definitely 100%, definitely not having any preview episodes this week. So with that said, my name is Todd, and this is the Free Kick Podcast.